A report that was published today could potentially have a hand in producing those regulations. We don't know yet just how much of this report that was published by Mars Solutions Lab we could see in the regulations next week. Now, they list many recommendations to help level the playing field between taxis and UberX. And when you look at it, it's actually less focused on creating regulations for Uber and more focused on removing financial barriers for taxi drivers.
But there's three basic things where we say, regardless of whatever platform, every driver needs to be vetted. The background check needs to be good, and the requirements for that should be set by the city. The vehicle should be inspected, and everyone should have proper insurance.
They're basic rules the taxi industry has been calling for when it comes to UberX. But the question of how to implement them has been a difficult one to answer. Mars Solutions Lab has some ideas, including how part-time Uber drivers can also pay a licensing fee.
With licensing fees, we say, why not introduce much more flexible licensing fees, where you would pay actually a fee per ride instead of a standard amount, which would allow for much more flexibility.
That's just one in a list of solutions proposed. Mars consulted with more than 100 stakeholders and 2 levels of government to come up with them. The goal? To help level the playing field, and the report has drivers talking.
I think that's not fair.
Why not?
Everybody should have a same, paying same fees, even Uber or taxi driver.
Maybe it's a good idea.
The city of Toronto, the cab driver and licensed plate owners are paying significant, much more fees than that. Like, I'll give you an example. In Edmonton, this is 6 cents per ride. It's not going to cover the fees. Right now, we're paying about $1,500 per plate and $350 per driver.
The authors of the report identified other ways to relieve the financial burden for taxi drivers. One suggestion, to remove mandatory training courses.
I think those things are unnecessary. Like in real life, hardly we use them.
But not everyone agrees.
They want to bring down the safety and training for CPR and training for a cab driver. We're trying to improve the drivers here. We're not trying to decrease the level of customer service here.
Another issue, the high cost of insurance for cabbies who pay upwards of $4,000 a year. The report suggests the province allow discounts based on good driver history.
Yeah, it's good. Because it's, cost of insurance is skyrocketing for us.
Recommendations also call for deregulating fares, allowing individual companies to set their prices in order to compete, something the manager of City Taxi isn't in favor of.
The taxi fares are regulated by the City of Toronto, and that's why they're regulated. So for consumer safety, consumer protection, we know what time and what date, it's always the same fare. If you go on UberX, if it's raining or snowing, they can just jack the price, and it's not affordable at all.
The recommendations come in this 100-page report, which also includes solutions for other sharing economy companies like Airbnb. Now, what's unclear is how many of these recommendations that they've made here will be considered by the city when they make their Uber regulations. The authors of the report say they focused more on removing barriers for existing drivers over creating rules for Uber. But Sakan says it's not enough.
If Uber wants to drive, they have to be a licensed taxi driver or a licensed limousine driver and follow the proper bylaws and work under the conditions we are working under.
If you look at our report, then probably from every side, there are parts of our report that people will like, and there are parts of the report that they will maybe not like. What our attempt was to come with a balanced approach and present a set of solutions.
As I mentioned, the city was consulted for this report. They say they are looking at it and making considerations, but it's unclear how many of these recommendations will actually appear in those regulations. Now, one of the other major issues this report was trying to tackle is the challenges around home sharing. Now, home sharing sites like Airbnb allow users to rent out their houses and condos to guests for a price. But there are questions about when that line gets crossed from sharing your home to running a hotel. Now, this report out today from Mars Solutions Lab suggests a way to help clear up some of that confusion.
We suggest actually a very simple threshold. We say if it's about your own home, your primary residence, and you're living there more than 50% of the time, then it's home sharing, and then you can actually have a lighter regime. If it's beyond that, it becomes a commercial enterprise, and probably you will need a different set of regulations that are for commercial activity. So we say it's your primary residence max to up to 180 days a year, and if you're below that, then it's home sharing and you should be allowed to do that.
Now, the report does point out that the situation may be different for condo owners, where condo boards can set the rules as to what homeowners can do in terms of renting out their homes for short-term rentals, and they are calling for those boards to be more proactive and look at these types of guidelines instead of just canceling or not allowing these things outright. Now, if you want to take a look at some of the other suggestions being made from this report about how to make the sharing economy better, you can find a link on our website. It's citynews.ca.